My attorney's text came through at 6:47 a.m. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, call me before you speak to her again. I stared at my phone in the pre-dawn darkness of my bedroom, coffee growing cold on the nightstand. I'd expected this message for weeks now, ever since the family dinners started feeling less like gatherings and more like depositions. Ever since my niece Jessica started showing up with her new boyfriend, the one with the real estate license and the calculating eyes. The mansion had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it in 1924 with money from his textile business, back when this neighborhood was where the city's old money settled. 12 rooms, original hardwood throughout, a library with built-in mahogany shelves, and a garden that my late wife Marie had spent 20 years perfecting. The property taxes alone would make most people weep, but I'd always managed. I'm 65 now, retired from a career in corporate law that left me comfortable but not wealthy. The mansion was my inheritance, my responsibility, and for 40 years my home. Marie and I raised our daughter here. We hosted Christmas dinners, summer garden parties, neighborhood gatherings. Every room held a memory. But Marie passed 3 years ago and our daughter Emily lived in Seattle with her own family. The house felt bigger after Marie died, quieter. Some nights I'd walk the halls and hear echoes of laughter that existed only in my memory. That's when my sister Margaret started the campaign. It began subtly. Concerned phone calls about whether I was eating properly, managing the utilities, keeping up with repairs. Then Jessica, Margaret's daughter, started visiting more often, always with suggestions. The garden needed professionals, the roof needed inspection. Had I thought about what would happen to this place when I was gone? Uncle Richard, she'd say, perching on Marie's favorite chair in the library, you have to think practically. This house is too much for one person. I'd smile and pour her tea and let her talk. Then came the boyfriend, Trevor, mid-30s, slicked hair, expensive watch that didn't quite match his off-the-rack suit. He had opinions about everything. Market value, comparative properties, development potential. Properties like this, he'd say, walking through my home like he was measuring it for a coffin, they're not really meant for single occupancy anymore. The overhead alone, nod and say nothing and watch him calculate. The family meeting happened 3 weeks ago. Margaret called it, but Jessica orchestrated it. She gathered everyone at her mother's house, my sister Jessica, Trevor, my brother-in-law Frank, even my nephew David, who usually stayed out of family politics. Emily couldn't fly in from Seattle, but they put her on speakerphone. I arrived to find them arranged like a tribunal. Margaret looked uncomfortable. Frank wouldn't meet my eyes. Jessica sat at the head of the table with a folder of documents. Uncle Richard, she began, and I knew immediately this was rehearsed. We wanted to talk to you about the mansion. We're worried about you. I'm fine, I said. Dad, Emily's voice crackled through the phone. Just hear them out. Jessica opened the folder. We've done research. The property taxes on that house are $32,000 a year. Utilities average $1,800 a month. Insurance is through the roof because of the age and the features. When was the last time you had the electrical system inspected? 2 years ago. And the foundation? The house is 90 years old, Jessica. The foundation is stone and concrete. It's fine, but you don't know that. She pushed a paper across the table. We had Trevor run comps. Similar properties in the neighborhood are selling for between 1.8 and 2.2 million. Even accounting for needed repairs, you're sitting on significant equity. I'm not interested in selling. We're not suggesting you sell. Jessica smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. We're suggesting you transfer ownership to someone who can manage it properly, someone younger, someone who can handle the responsibility. The room went quiet. You want me to give you my house? I said. I want you to be realistic about your limitations. Jessica's voice sharpened. You're 65 years old. You live alone in a 12-room mansion. What happens when you fall? When you can't manage the stairs? When the roof needs replacing and you can't afford it? I can afford. You're on a fixed income. She pulled out another document. We know what your pension is worth. We know your savings. Uncle Richard, you're housebound and you're getting older. This isn't sustainable. Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Jessica, maybe we should. Mom, we talked about this. Someone needs to be direct. Jessica turned back to me. Trevor and I are prepared to take over the property. We'll handle all maintenance, all taxes, all responsibilities. You can stay there as long as you want. We'll even cover your living expenses, but the title needs to transfer to someone who can actually manage it. I looked around the table. Margaret looked guilty. Frank looked away. David studied his hands. On the phone, Emily was silent. And if I say no? I asked. Jessica's expression hardened. Then we worry about what happens when you can't take care of yourself anymore. When the house falls into disrepair, when you end up in a situation where decisions have to be made without your input. It wasn't quite a threat, but it was close enough. I stood up. I appreciate your concern. I'll think about it. Uncle Richard, I said, I'll think about it. I left, drove home to my too big, too expensive mansion, sat in the library where Marie and I used to read together on Sunday mornings, and I called my attorney. Gerald Whitmore had been my colleague before I retired, then became my friend, then became my lawyer when I needed someone who understood both the law and the situation. We'd handled Marie's estate together. He knew what this house meant. They're going to push, Gerald said after I explained the meeting. Jessica's the type who doesn't take no for an answer, I noticed. The question is, what do you want to do? I looked around the library, at the books Marie collected, at the window seat where Emily used to read as a child, at the fireplace where we'd burned Christmas logs every December for 40 years. I want them to understand what they're really asking for, I said. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Richard, are you sure? Completely. This could get ugly. It's already ugly, they just don't know it yet. Over the next 3 weeks, Jessica called me 6 times, casual at first, checking in, seeing how I was doing, mentioning in passing that Trevor had connections who could help with the property transfer. Then more direct, had I thought about what we discussed? Had I talked to a lawyer? Time was important, Uncle Richard. The longer we waited, the more complicated things became. I deflected, said I was considering options, said I needed time. She escalated. The second family meeting happened at my house. Jessica's idea. She wanted to see the space with fresh eyes, which really meant she wanted Trevor to walk through with his clipboard and his measuring tape and his barely concealed contempt for anything built before 1990. Margaret came. Frank came. David came. Emily was on speaker again. They sat in my living room, the room where Marie and I had hosted countless gatherings, and Jessica presented what she called a fair proposal. We've drawn up preliminary paperwork, she said, handing me a document. Simple transfer of deed. Trevor and I take ownership. You retain lifetime residency. We cover all expenses. You sign over power of attorney for property decisions. Clean, straightforward, protects everyone. I read through it slowly. Gerald had prepared me for exactly this document. It was worse than I'd expected. This gives you complete control, I said. Someone needs to have control, Uncle Richard. Right now no one does. You're letting this place deteriorate. The house is fine. The gutters are full of leaves. The garden is overgrown. There's a crack in the driveway that's going to become a sinkhole. I'll handle it. When? Jessica's voice rose. You're too old for this mansion. You can barely manage yourself, let alone 12 rooms and half an acre. Be honest. You're overwhelmed. You're in over your head. You need help. Margaret touched Jessica's arm. Sweetheart, maybe. Mom, stop protecting him. He needs to hear this. Jessica turned back to me. Sign the papers, Uncle Richard. Let someone younger take the burden. You've done enough. It's time. I set the document down carefully, looked at my niece who I'd known since she was born, who I'd held at her christening, who used to play in this very room when she was 7 years old. You want the house, I said quietly. I want you to be taken care of. No, you want the house, the property, the value. That's not Jessica. My voice was calm, controlled. Do you know what a lien is? She blinked. What? A lien, a legal claim against a property, usually for unpaid debts. I know what a lien is. Good. Then you should know that transferring property with outstanding liens can be complicated. The new owner assumes responsibility for those debts. Her expression flickered, uncertain. What are you talking about? I stood up. 3 months ago I took out a home equity line of credit against this property, $400,000. The room went silent. You what? Margaret whispered. I needed liquid capital for investments. The mansion has significant equity, so I leveraged it. Standard financial practice. 400,000. Jessica's voice was faint. Plus interest. Current balance is roughly 412,000. Trevor spoke for the first time. That's more than half the property's value. Market value, yes, but given the age of the house, necessary repairs, the current real estate climate, actual value is lower. Factor in the lien and the net equity is, I paused, well, substantially less impressive. Jessica was staring at me. You're lying. No. I walked to my desk, pulled out a folder Gerald had prepared. Here's the documentation. Loan agreement, current balance statement, lien filing, all public record actually. If Trevor had done proper due diligence instead of just running comps, he'd have found it. I handed the folder to her, watched her hands shake as she opened it. Of course, I continued, none of this matters if you're really concerned about my well-being and not the property value. You said you'd cover all expenses, right? The loan payment is $3,200 a month. Plus the property taxes, utilities, maintenance. You're looking at roughly $7,000 a month in carrying costs for a house with minimal equity. But I'm sure that's fine since this is about helping me, not about acquiring valuable real estate. Jessica's face had gone white. Trevor was reading over her shoulder, his expression darkening. You did this on purpose, Jessica whispered. I secured financing for my retirement investments, perfectly legal. You knew we wanted. She stopped herself. Wanted what? I asked softly. She didn't answer, just stared at the documents like they were a death sentence. Margaret found her voice. Richard, why would you take on that kind of debt? Because I needed capital, and because I wanted to see what Jessica really cared about. I looked at my niece. If this was about my welfare, the lien wouldn't matter. You'd still want to help, still want to make sure I was taken care of. But it does matter, doesn't it? Because this was never about me. It was about a $2 million property you thought you could acquire through guilt and family pressure. That's not fair, Jessica said, but her voice was hollow. Isn't it? I took the document she'd brought, the transfer paperwork. This gives you complete control, removes me from all decisions. Eventually, probably sooner rather than later, you'd decide I needed better care somewhere else. The house would be yours, free and clear, except it wouldn't be free, would it? It would come with $400,000 in debt you'd have to service or pay off. We should go, Trevor said quietly. No, Jessica was still staring at the lien documents. No, there has to be. Uncle Richard, you can pay this off, you have the money. I don't actually, I invested it, then uninvest it. Why would I do that? My returns are excellent. Because, she struggled, because you can't maintain this house with that kind of debt. I've managed so far. You won't be able to keep up the payments. Then I'll sell the house, pay off the lien, pocket whatever equity remains and move somewhere smaller. My choice, my decision. The words hung in the air. Jessica stood abruptly. This is insane. You've destroyed the property's value out of spite. I've leveraged my asset for financial gain. That's not spite, that's strategy. You've made it worthless to anyone but yourself. Yes, I said simply. I have. She grabbed her purse. Trevor gathered the documents. Margaret looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. You're going to regret this, Jessica said from the doorway. I doubt it. When you're old and sick and you can't afford care, then I'll sell the house, Jessica. Like I said, my choice. They left. The house fell quiet again. Emily's voice came through the phone speaker, forgotten in the chaos. Dad, I'm here, honey. Did you really do that? The loan? Yes. A long pause, then quietly, good. Jessica wasn't finished. 2 days later, Margaret showed up alone. She looked tired, older than her 63 years. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd had milk and cookies as children. She's not speaking to me, Margaret said. Jessica, she thinks I should have warned her, should have known somehow. I'm sorry, don't be she. Margaret sighed. I raised her to be ambitious, independent, but somewhere along the way, ambitious became entitled. I kept making excuses. She's driven. She's goal-oriented. She knows what she wants. She wanted my house. She wanted the value, the asset. She and Trevor have plans, big plans. They need capital. Margaret looked at me. I should have stopped her sooner, should have told her to back off, but I thought maybe she was right. Maybe you did need help. Maybe the house was too much. It's not. I know that now. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Richard, for all of it. You didn't do anything wrong. I let my daughter treat you like an obstacle instead of a person. That's wrong enough. After Margaret left, I thought it was over, but I'd underestimated Jessica's determination. The next escalation came through my nephew David. He called, apologetic, uncomfortable. Uncle Richard, I need to ask you something. Jessica called me last night. She's saying maybe we need to be concerned about your mental state. My blood went cold. Excuse me. She thinks taking out that loan was irrational. She's saying maybe you're not making good decisions, that we should consider options, legal options for your protection. She wants to declare me incompetent. David was quiet for a moment. She mentioned a conservatorship, said it might be necessary if you're making dangerous financial decisions. I called Gerald immediately. She won't succeed, Gerald said after I explained. You're demonstrably competent. Legal, rational financial decision, but she can make your life difficult trying. What do I do? We prepare, and Richard, you might want to consider accelerating your plan. Accelerating. Give her what she wants. Let's see what happens when she actually gets it. I thought about it for 3 days, thought about Marie, about what she'd say, thought about the house, the memories, the weight of it all. Then I called Jessica. We should talk, I said, about the transfer. She met me at Gerald's office the following Monday, brought Trevor and her own lawyer, came in confident, ready to negotiate, thought she'd won. Gerald had prepared everything, clean transfer documents, legitimate, legal, exactly what Jessica had asked for. You're sure about this? Jessica asked, but I could see the excitement in her eyes. I'm sure, on one condition. Her expression tightened. What condition? The loan transfers with the property. You assume responsibility for the lien. Standard in property transfers. Your lawyer can confirm. Jessica's lawyer, a young woman with sharp eyes, nodded. That's customary. Outstanding debts against the property transfer with the deed unless otherwise specified in the agreement. But we can pay it off, Trevor said quickly. Once we own the property, we can refinance, roll it into a new loan with better terms. Of course, Gerald said mildly. Assuming you qualify for refinancing on a 90-year-old property with deferred maintenance needs. Not that bad, Jessica said, isn't it? Gerald opened another folder. I had an independent inspection done last week for insurance purposes. Would you like to see the report? He slid it across the table. I watched Jessica's face as she read. The roof needed replacing within 2 years. Estimated cost $65,000. The electrical system was outdated and posed fire risks. Estimated upgrade $70,000. The foundation had minor but expanding cracks. Estimated repair $40,000. The plumbing was original and failing. Estimated replacement $55,000. The HVAC system was past its service life. Estimated replacement $35,000. Total recommended repairs $245,000. This is, Jessica looked up. This is worst case scenario. It's an inspection report. Conservative certainly, but factual. Gerald leaned back. Of course, none of these repairs are immediately necessary, but they will be necessary soon. And any responsible property owner would need to address them. Trevor was doing math on his phone. His expression was grim. So let me understand, Jessica's lawyer said slowly. Mr. Whitmore's client is transferring a property with approximately $1.8 million in market value. $400,000 in outstanding debt, and $245,000 in necessary repairs. Net equity of roughly $1.2 million, assuming repairs are completed and the property can be sold at current market rates. Assuming, Gerald agreed. But the carrying costs while those repairs are being made, property taxes, utilities, loan payments, insurance, would be approximately $7,000 per month, approximately, for what could be a year or more of renovation work before the property is marketable, possibly longer. Historic properties have permitting requirements. Depending on the work, you might need historic commission approval, which adds time and cost. Jessica was staring at the documents like they'd caught fire. Of course, I said quietly, you don't have to accept the transfer. This is entirely voluntary. I'm offering because you insisted it was the right thing to do, but if you've changed your mind. No, Jessica's voice was sharp, too sharp. No, we want to help. We want to make sure you're taken care of. Wonderful, Gerald. Gerald produced the final documents. Clean transfer of deed, full assumption of all liens and encumbrances. Jessica retains all responsibility for property maintenance, taxes, insurance, and repairs. I retain lifetime residency rights with no financial obligations. Once you sign, Gerald said, the property is yours, along with everything that comes with it. Jessica's hand was shaking as she reached for the pen. Trevor grabbed her wrist. Jess, we need to think about this. Don't. She pulled away. We've come this far. He's giving us exactly what we wanted. Is he? Sign the papers, Trevor. He hesitated. Then slowly he signed. Jessica signed. Their lawyer witnessed. Gerald notarized. Congratulations, I said. The house is yours. The first 3 weeks were quiet. I stayed in my rooms, kept to myself, heard Jessica and Trevor coming and going, measuring, planning, talking to contractors. Then the bills started arriving. First the loan payment, $3,200, due the 15th of every month, then property taxes, first quarterly installment, $8,000, then insurance, annual premium, $6,000, then the roof, emergency top needed after a storm, $3,500, then the HVAC system failed completely during a cold snap, emergency replacement, $42,000. I heard them arguing on the phone in the library, Jessica's voice rising, frustrated, desperate. We can't afford this, she was saying. The carrying costs alone, and now the HVAC. Trevor, we're burning through our savings, murmured response. We can't wait 2 years to sell. We needed this to be quick. Flip it, sell it, use the equity for the development deal, but with all these repairs. More murmuring. I know what he did, I know he set us up, but we signed the papers, we own it now. She saw me in the doorway, her face flushed. Uncle Richard, Jessica, everything all right? Fine, everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. Over the next 2 months I watched the reality crush them. The Historic Commission denied their first permit application for roof work, wrong materials. The second application took 6 weeks to approve. The roofing company they'd hired discovered additional damage once they started. Another $15,000. The electrical upgrade required more permits, more delays, more costs. The foundation repair exposed a drainage issue. The drainage fix required excavation. The excavation revealed old pipes that needed replacing. Every repair opened a new problem. Every problem cost money they didn't have. I heard Trevor on the phone with his boss. Heard him explain why he needed a second mortgage. Heard the rejection, heard Jessica crying in what used to be Marie's sewing room. Finally, 3 months after signing the papers, Jessica knocked on my door. She looked exhausted, defeated. Can we talk? She asked. We sat in the kitchen. Same table where I'd sat with Margaret. Same house that had been in my family for 3 generations. We can't do this, Jessica said quietly. The house, we can't afford it, can't manage it, we're drowning. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? She looked at me with red eyes. Or is this what you wanted? I wanted you to understand what you were asking for. We were trying to help you. No, Jessica, you were trying to acquire a valuable asset. You saw an old man in a big house and decided he didn't deserve it anymore, decided you knew better, decided you could pressure and guilt and manipulate your way into ownership. That's not, it is. You said it yourself at that first meeting. I'm too old, too incompetent, too much of a burden. You wanted this house and you wanted me out of the way. She looked down, silent. The thing is, I continued, I've been managing this house for 40 years. I know every pipe, every wire, every crack in every wall. I know what it costs to maintain, what it needs when things will fail. I've been preparing for these repairs for years, saving, budgeting, planning, that loan. It gave me the capital to make those repairs myself on my timeline at my cost. But you walked in blind, saw the value, not the reality, and now you're learning what it actually takes to own something like this. We want to give it back, Jessica whispered. Can't. You signed the papers, it's yours. Please, Jessica, I leaned forward. I offered you a way out before you signed, multiple times. You insisted, you demanded. You said this was about helping me, about doing the right thing. So do the right thing, honor your commitment, manage the property you insisted on taking. We'll lose everything. Then you'll learn an expensive lesson about greed. She started crying, real tears this time, not manipulation, not performance, genuine despair. I felt something twist in my chest. She was still my niece, still the little girl who used to play in this house. There is one option, I said finally. She looked up. What option? You sell the property back to me. I'll pay fair market value minus the outstanding debt and necessary repairs. You'll walk away with a small loss instead of bankruptcy. How can you afford? My investments did well, very well. I can cover the purchase and the repairs. She stared. You had the money all along. Yes, you let us go through this knowing you could fix it any time. Yes, that's cruel. Is it, or is it educational? I stood up. Talk to Trevor, talk to your lawyer. You have 1 week to decide. After that, the offer expires and you're on your own. They accepted 4 days later. The transaction took 2 weeks. Gerald handled everything. Jessica and Trevor signed over the deed. I paid them $1.1 million market value minus debt minus repairs minus carrying costs they'd incurred. They walked away with roughly $200,000 in net loss. Jessica didn't speak to me at the signing, just signed her name and left. Margaret called that night. She's devastated, my sister said. Humiliated, she lost money, lost face, lost credibility. Trevor broke up with her, said he couldn't trust her judgment anymore. I'm sorry. Are you? I thought about it. Yes and no, I'm sorry she's hurting, but I'm not sorry she learned this lesson now while she's young enough to recover from it. She thinks you hate her. I don't. I love her, but I also won't be manipulated by her. She wanted your help, Richard. No, she wanted my house. There's a difference. The house is quiet again now. The repairs are being done properly on my schedule by contractors I trust. The garden is recovering. The rooms feel less empty somehow. Emily called yesterday from Seattle, said she was proud of me, said Mom would have been proud too. I'm not sure about that. Marie was kinder than me, more forgiving. She might have handled this differently, but she's not here and I had to handle it my way. I'm sitting in the library now in the chair where Marie used to read. The afternoon sun comes through the windows the same way it did 40 years ago. The house settles around me with familiar creaks and groans. Jessica sent me a message last week. Brief, formal, said she hoped I was happy, said she wouldn't bother me again. I didn't respond. Maybe that makes me cruel. Maybe she's right to hate me, but I'm 65 years old. I've spent my life building something, a career, a marriage, a home, a legacy. And I'll be damned if I let someone take it from me through guilt and manipulation, even someone I love. This house has been in my family for 3 generations. It will stay in my family until I decide otherwise, on my terms, according to my timeline, not Jessica's, not Trevor's, mine. The truth is, I didn't set out to teach Jessica a lesson. I set out to protect myself, to show her that I wasn't the weak, confused old man she decided I was. That I was still capable of making my own decisions, managing my own life, defending what was mine, but somewhere in the process it became about more than that. It became about showing her what real ownership means. Not just the asset but the responsibility, not just the value but the cost. She saw this house as a windfall, a stepping stone, a means to an end. She never saw it as a home, as a burden, as something that requires constant attention and sacrifice and love. Now she knows. Margaret visits sometimes. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. She apologized again last month, said she should have intervened sooner. I told her what I told her before. She didn't do anything wrong. She raised her daughter. That daughter made her own choices. We don't talk about Jessica much. Margaret says she's moved to Denver, took a job with a marketing firm, starting over. Maybe that's for the best. David called a few weeks ago. Said he wanted to apologize too for going along with the family pressure. I told him there was nothing to apologize for. He was caught in the middle trying to keep peace. I understand that. The renovation is almost complete. New roof, new electrical foundation repaired, HVAC running perfectly. The house looks better than it has in years. Marie would be pleased. Cost me just over $200,000, but I had the capital. The investment returns I made from that home equity loan more than covered the expense. Gerald was right. It was a sound financial strategy, but it was also more than that. It was a statement: I am not helpless, I am not incompetent, I am not too old to manage my own life, and I will not be manipulated by family guilt into surrendering what I've spent my life building. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have just said no from the beginning, drawn a firm boundary, ended it cleanly. Maybe they're right, maybe there was a simpler way, but I don't think Jessica would have accepted a simple no. She would have pushed, pressed, found other angles of attack. The conservatorship threat proved that she was determined to get what she wanted, and she saw me as an obstacle to be overcome, not a person to be respected. So I let her get what she wanted, and I let her discover what that really meant. The garden is coming back beautifully. I hired a landscaper, a young woman named Sarah, just starting her business. She's been working miracles with Marie's rose beds, says the bones of the garden are excellent, just needed proper care. We've been talking about adding some native plants, creating a pollinator section in the back corner. Marie would have liked that. I've been thinking about the future more lately. Not in the panicked, pressured way Jessica tried to force on me, but in my own time, on my own terms. Emily and I have been talking. She and her family might move back east in a few years when her husband's contract is up. They'd like to be closer, especially as I get older. If that happens, maybe they'll move into the mansion. Raise their kids here the way Emily was raised. Let another generation of memories fill these rooms, or maybe I'll live here another 20 years enjoying every moment, then sell it and move somewhere smaller. Use the money to travel, to spoil my grandchildren, to fund Emily's retirement, or maybe something else entirely. The point is, it's my choice, my timeline, my life. That's what Jessica never understood. It wasn't about the house. It was about agency, about respect. About recognizing that being 65 doesn't mean being incompetent, and living alone doesn't mean needing rescue. I got a letter last month, forwarded through Margaret, Jessica's handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was short. Said she'd been in therapy. Said she was working on understanding why she'd behaved the way she did. Said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, just wanted me to know she was trying to be better. Said she finally understood what I'd been trying to teach her. I don't know if I believe that. Don't know if she really understands, or if she's just saying what she thinks I want to hear. But I kept the letter. Maybe in a few years, when enough time has passed, we'll talk again. Really talk, not about the house or property or money, but about family, about mistakes, about the difference between helping someone and controlling them. Maybe, or maybe that bridge is burned permanently. Maybe some lessons come with permanent consequences. I'm okay with that either way. Gerald stopped by yesterday. Brought a bottle of scotch, the expensive kind he saves for special occasions. We sat in the library, poured 2 glasses, toasted to survival. You know, he said, when you first told me your plan, I thought you were being vindictive. And now I think you were being strategic. There's a difference. Is there? Vindictive would have been refusing to help when they were drowning. Strategic was letting them drown just enough to learn to swim. He sipped his scotch. Though I'll admit the line is thin, very thin. Any regrets? I thought about it, about Jessica's tears, about the family tension, about the money lost and relationships strained. No, I said finally, no regrets. I protected what was mine. I maintained my dignity. I proved I was capable. If that makes me harsh, so be it. I've spent my whole life being reasonable, being accommodating, being the peacemaker. Sometimes you have to be willing to fight. Gerald raised his glass. To fighting, to fighting. The house is quiet now, evening settling in. I can hear the new HVAC system running smoothly, the old pipes no longer groaning, the repaired foundation solid beneath my feet. I'm 65 years old. I live alone in a 12-room mansion. My late wife's roses are blooming in the garden. My daughter calls every Sunday from Seattle. My attorney is my closest friend. I have enough money to live comfortably, enough health to enjoy it, enough clarity to make my own decisions, and I have my house, my home, my sanctuary, on my terms. Jessica thought I was too old for this mansion, thought I couldn't handle it, thought she knew better. She was wrong. I'm not too old. I'm exactly the right age, old enough to know what matters, experienced enough to protect it, and wise enough to recognize manipulation when I see it. The mansion has been in my family for 3 generations. It will stay here until I decide otherwise, not because I'm stubborn, not because I'm being unreasonable, but because it's mine. Because I earned it, because I've maintained it. Because Marie and I built a life here, raised our daughter here, created memories that can't be valued on any real estate comp sheet. And because sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand your ground, even against family, especially against family. I finish my scotch, close the curtains against the gathering darkness, walk through the rooms, turning on lights, feeling the house settle around me. Tomorrow I'll meet with Sarah about the pollinator garden. Next week the final inspection on the electrical work. Next month Emily and her family visit for Thanksgiving. Life continues. The house stands, I remain, and somewhere in Denver Jessica is starting over, learning, growing, maybe becoming the person she should have been all along. I hope so. But either way, it's not my problem anymore. I'm too old for that kind of drama. I'm just old enough for this mansion, and I'm keeping it.